Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second session of OER Under the Hood. I am Jen, and I wanted to welcome you all on behalf of Pressbooks. I'm coming to you from Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, which is situated on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. This is a new webinar series that we run in partnership with OE Global and folks from our community who are doing really cool things. So essentially, the concept is that we take a look under the hood, or I guess under the bonnet is maybe the more appropriate term in this context. But really, what we mean by that is we take a look behind the scenes of various unique Pressbooks projects and how they came to be. So in a minute, I am going to hand it over to Alan and our panelists to talk about their projects. First, just a couple housekeeping notes. So the chat is open. Feel free to introduce yourselves, where you're coming from, chat with each other. We love an active chat. And if you have questions that you'd like to direct towards the panelists specifically, I'd ask that you please use the Q&A function so it's clear for them to see. And they may have some time to answer throughout, but we will be having a 10 to 15-minute Q&A at the end, so you can also hold questions for that. And with that, take it away, Alan and team.
All right. Thank you so much, Jen, and welcome everybody. It's so great to be in Australia. I wish I was there. I'm actually, well, I'm relatively close to Jen. I'm also in Canada, just a bit more in the middle, and I'm on outside of a place on the map known as Moose Jaw, but it's the traditional land of Treaty 4 territory. And I am just so glad that Pressbooks and Jen is interested in this concept. And really the idea, like she said, is like, we get to learn about OERs. Often you see like a presentation and you'll see, or it'll be announced and you go and look at it. And we really thought it'd be a good idea to get to talk to the people who built them and understand what went into the making of it. And instead of doing slides, we're going to be doing screen sharing. So we're going to actually open the OERs. And this one was really exciting. And I also want to acknowledge and welcome my colleague Ash Barber from Call, who was really instrumental on helping us pick some appropriate cars to bring into the garage and identify some OERs because there's so much to choose from. That's we could do this like every week, I think. So we appreciate it, Ash, and please jump in wherever we go. Just a real big, strong push for the Call Collective and how they're supporting OER development in the region. So we looked at a bunch of suggestions, and these two that we're going to hear about really struck out because they're OERs, not in the sense of like open textbooks as much per se, as they're really the key reference and support materials, as you'll see, to help guide and support what are really like mostly, I would imagine, in-person activities that people do together to have a learning experience. And I think it's a really unique approach and really excited that you're going to get a chance to learn about a little bit about the medical diagnosis game. And we get to see how good, maybe we'll get to experience with a little bit of activity to understand how good we are at going through the process that medical professionals have to do. And then we'll get another chance to look at workplace scenarios, which you'll see a lot of similarities in these. So we're going to welcome to the floor of the garage per se. We have Nora Lepardi and we have Nara Janes, who are going to really lead us. It's going to be really exciting to get a feel and understanding what the diagnosis game is. And who's doing the screen sharing? Will we start there or?
Thanks, Alan. I think Nara is gonna start the screen
Okay.
sharing in a little
Yeah.
bit. First, hi everyone. My name is Nora. I am currently in Mianjin, Brisbane, on the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people. And obviously, I pay my respects to the ancestors and the descendants of all of the wonderful Indigenous people in Australia and across the world, which we are where we are. I maybe will start with a little bit of a story as to how diagnosis came to be. In many medical schools, both in Northern America and all over the world, to be honest, we use simulation-based learning to allow students to engage with the processes that they will continuously do when they become medical professionals. So decision-making, teamwork skills, diagnostic and clinical reasoning. And unfortunately, simulation-based learning is very, very expensive, particularly as it often requires mannequins or advanced simulation technology like software. And the fact that this is so expensive and the fact that this is also difficult then to customize and make extremely contextualized and relevant to the students' learning, obviously is not the best learning experience that we could have. So Nara and I particularly worked in the field of clinical reasoning and encouraging students to engage with clinical reasoning, make decisions and take actions within the clinical reasoning cycles by Levitt-Jones, etc. And we wanted to have a structure that allowed us to have the students make these decisions and see the outcomes of those decisions without any risk to the patient, but in a more elaborate format than just slide after slide after slide. So, since our institution didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend, we decided to create a board game. This is also partly our passion for board games and our engagement with board games throughout the extended lockdowns and the renaissance that now board games are seeing. So we designed, and we didn't do the actual drawing, but we designed a mock basically ED department / extended GP office with all of the different aspects that contribute to initial assessment and diagnosis of a patient. In the game, the students start from the coffee break room, which is right at the center, and move around the board to conduct investigations, such as to gather information, such as take a clinical history, do a physical examination, request imaging or pathology tests, and they move around the board by rolling dice, as you would in a normal board game. We have obviously written a rule book. I will now change my camera so that you can see a little bit of the setup. I've set up a mock session in my background. Maybe, I hope I come up as big enough for everyone. So this is the board, and we've just printed it and stuck onto a white foldable board, but you can obviously just print an A3 or even order a fancy one. And Nara has her own, she's holding her own up. And then we've obviously written the entire rule book for the facilitator, but this can also be not facilitated. And then we've designed 10 cases. And these 10 cases are around the fundamentals of common presentations, such as chest pain, fatigue, and I think I must be forgetting some, but Nara will tell us. Then we have designed a set of question cards that we have printed and in card sleeves, but they can also be printed on random, normal paper. We have identified an economic mechanic in the game using healthcare tokens. Each of them corresponds to approximately 20 Australian dollars. And we have game markers. We have actually included in the resource the link to a 3D printable game token that's sized correctly for the board when printed on an A3, but anyone can use anything. And this is really how we run the game. We run interactive sessions with the students. The students can run this game by facilitating themselves, or there can be a facilitator invited. And through this resource, they can actively participate in the learning and shape the session. Oh, thank you, Nara. shortness of breath, pain, confusion, drowsiness, fatigue, and cough. Through this game, the students can actively engage, acquire a lot of learning, have an experiential learning in terms of clinical reasoning. And we have now run this game as part of the curriculum for year 1 and year 2 students for now 2 years. And everyone is always very excited to see the board coming into the session, as they find really a lot of value in participating in simulation. We as educators find a lot of value in having the materials. They can all be printed for under $10 on a normal office printer. This is printed on A4 paper and stapled so that it's then folded in half. And customizing whenever we want to change something. If we think, oh, this is not actually how it would run in our local health unit, well, then we can change it, and you can change it. So this is a little bit, I've spoken enough. I'll leave it to Nara maybe to share a little bit more.
Yeah, and I was just going to answer a couple of the questions that are coming through. So in terms of how many players does it support? So it's quite flexible. So it's designed to be run with a facilitator, which could be an educationalist, but also could be a student that is designated as part of the group to be the facilitator. Or you can have individuals who facilitate for the other members of the group. So it's quite flexible. We sort of say ideally like a number of about 6 with 3 pairs is kind of a nice number to play with. You don't have to be in pairs to play it. It really can be flexible depending on how many students you have.
Yeah. One thing we have considered though is that you want to make at most 3 teams, because when it goes to 4 teams, the session becomes really long and drawn out.
And isn't there, there's something I've seen that there's a spooky consultant. What is that?
Yes. The spooky consultant. The spooky consultant is a game mechanic that challenges the students in remembering the basics and fundamentals of biomedical sciences, which sometimes are a little neglected in favor of the more exciting clinical knowledge, but are extremely relevant and fundamental to the students' understanding of diagnostic reasoning. So the spooky consultant is a mechanic that triggers when the marker is stuck in the middle of the board and can't access a room to gather more information. And the student is then asked, well, the team is asked 5 questions, and they can roll again if they answer 3 or more correctly within a minute. So this challenges the students and rewards them in letting them continue to play and have more information if they know their biomedical sciences and answer correctly. Now, obviously, and we acknowledge this in the resource, this is a little bit similar to the unfortunate practice of pimping students, which is something that happens in the medical education space, and it's very much undesirable. However, as we write, this is not meant to be punitive. It's meant to be just encouraging the students to engage with the biomedical sciences.
And we have, for the questions, we have a number of sets of questions based off different topic areas. So you can really, again, tweak it depending on what your students have actually learnt, and decide which ones you might want to test them on. You might decide they haven't done much on respiratory, so we remove that deck of cards from the game. So it's very flexible.
So the student, yeah, here's a good question there. Yeah.
I'll answer this question about dice because it was a really long decision. We actually did several rounds of play testing. So the way the board is designed, and maybe Nara can share it again, you need to roll 8 to go from one room to the one directly opposite. And the way we've positioned the rooms makes students want to do that. So from the top room, the one you see in green, history, the best clinical diagnostic process takes you to the room opposite, which is physical examination. And we wanted students to have an opportunity to do that the first go by rolling an 8, which is not possible with a standard 6-sided die. But also we wanted to make that a really lucky occasion and instead challenge them to engage with the spooky consultant or decide alternative routes, such as ducking into the tutorial room to acquire more healthcare tokens and more money to order further investigations. So we did several rounds of playtesting with students, and we found that the ones where we had 2 4-sided die actually were more exciting, and the students felt more involved. So that's what we decided to do. We were also reassured that 4-sided dice are available online, and you can roll digital dice. Google has a dedicated dice roller that you can use. So they are not inaccessible as they may have been maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I hope this answers your question, Brandon.
That's a good one. I don't know if I would have thought to ask about the die, but that's very logical. So the students have to make a decision about which rooms they decide to go to. That's part of the process, right?
Yes.
So it's not
Yes.
they have to go through a sequence.
No. There's obviously best or most efficient sequence if the die roll allows it. But also with the uncertainty of the die roll, we encourage students to think a little bit more broadly and tell them, plan ahead. Maybe you want to bring yourself closer to the radiology room because you think this patient might need a piece of imaging. And in that case, start thinking about what that would be. Do you need money for it? And it's really something that challenges them to think about the diagnostic process in a more comprehensive way than what we can do when we go slide after slide after slide.
And it's also adding.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Nara. It's your show.
I was just going to say with that, going back to the money and the planning around that, what do you think you're going to need to order? We try to add in this extra element that we don't even get in the clinical environment sometimes, but it is something that people are talking more and more about, which is that sustainability of resources. So students really need to, they can't just go, I want to get every test. They have to actually think about which is the best test in that patient. And if they don't plan that well, then there are repercussions in terms of the number of turns it takes them to go back, get more money, and then come back to the room. So that was one of the other big things we were kind of focused on.
Definitely. I'll now take maybe the question on how did we create the board game image. All of the board game graphics have been created by Katharina, who is a healthcare consumer and artist. And she was very open to participating in this project, and we compensated her for her time. And she was very generous in then giving us the copyright of those images. And this is why the images cannot be edited. We don't have we have the ND in the non-derivative Creative Commons license, just because we want to respect her work. And one more question. What challenges did you have in ensuring all the printables were formatted correctly? And how did you test printability? Yes. One thing I'll say is that we really wanted a no screens experience, because we spend so much time with students and they're looking at their screens and we are looking at our screens and we don't engage eye to eye, which is an educationally important part of growth, we think. Everything is provided in A4, and the A4s are formatted so that they will print correctly once they are printed and the printing settings are not changed. And all of the downloadable resources are on the University of Newcastle website. Shout out the library of the University of Newcastle, who allowed us this space. If you print the downloadable materials in PDF as they are set to print, they will print correctly. But also we have provided Word documents because we want any educator, wherever they are, to make this a very editable resource and can be contextualized. Similarly, we have also provided case templates and question card templates and medical record templates that can be built from scratch. And we actually have, if someone does this, we would love to hear from them so that we can include that case in new iterations and build a bit more of a community around this game. Nara, was there anything you wanted to add about this?
I don't think so, no. Just thought I'd show you where you can print them.
Yeah. And thank you, Alan, for sharing the link in the chat.
So what was, it's funny, we haven't even talked about Pressbooks. So how did that factor in, and what was the decision, and what was the process for building this as a Pressbook?
I have to shout out Ruth Gibbons, who did a lot of this work and imported all of the tables so that we showed correctly in Pressbooks. We wanted to make this widely available to everyone. We wanted to make it available for free. We wanted to make it very editable, and Pressbooks allowed us to do that. It's a very flexible platform. We could embed links to the printable resources. We could embed links to the Google die rollers, and we are very, very happy that Pressbooks was so flexible to integrate all of this. And we envision to even make it more flexible in future iterations. We are working on a how to play video that we can then embed in Pressbooks. So that's going to help all of the materials stay available there, and really be the center for these resources to continue growing.
I find it interesting that, I mean, a key role is the facilitator, because it's not game mechanics that drive everything. There's a game master, if you will, but it sounds like it's not like something you have to be expert in the field to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that you say that students sometimes take that role. Do they get a different kind of experience then out of it, right?
Yes. And part of becoming a doctor is also becoming an educator. So this is a really core skill that we teach our students, and for them to engage in supporting others' development is something we really believe in. So we have provided really clear information and guidance on how to facilitate a game to help anyone, anywhere play this game. And students tell us that they download the game and play it with each other. They probably organize their own sessions sometimes, which is great. And that's how it's meant to be. We want students to be able to be independent and self-directed in their learning.
And that would be like included in there, like if you look through the Pressbook, you have like all the materials that go with it. You have x-rays, and you've got medical charts, and you've got little bits that, in a typical game might be just a whole bunch of paper, but this way it's a beautiful reference that's available.
Yes. And it's all
Yes,
collated
exactly.
into the one spot, organized neatly so that it's easily searchable. And we're very happy that really it allowed us to structure things the way we wanted to be structured. So it really worked well for us, and we'll look forward to see it growing.
And last, like, any suggestions to people who might want to like take on this kind of endeavor? What does it take to build a game?
Yeah.
I think one of the things we really valued was partnering with the students and getting their input, particularly in the game testing phase, but also in the development of some of the cases to see what they were interested in and the questions. So that was a really good aspect of it, I think. It takes a lot of time because we're all busy people. to develop. So I guess not having high expectations of it being a quick process.
Yeah,
Well, fantastic.
probably
Yeah.
many iterations of, imagining a rule, playtesting it with the students, checking how they felt about it, editing it slightly, playtesting it again. It's not just about, oh, this is how it works, it makes sense. It's about a bit of trial and error. And yes, it did take a bit of time, but honestly, the students who worked with us in this project were really happy to do all of this. They felt really that they were able to make suggestions and shape the game. So it was wonderful for everyone.
It also seems like this process was really quite wonderful and invigorating for the two of you as well with your own practice, not just for the students.
I think for me, it felt sometimes like a little bit of a break from the just academic writing, which can feel a little bit isolating sometimes.
Yeah, it's nice to use your creative brain a little bit more, which you don't get to do every single day.
And it's just so, as you said, Nora, at one point, like it's away from the screens. Not that the screens are bad, but I think it's real good to be thinking about the kinds of activities that we can do. So we're really so excited that you're able to share, and I hope people go back and look at the medical diagnosis in Pressbook form, and also the extra materials that you can. It's a different approach. Than we typically think about, and that's really creative, and we salute you for that. And we're gonna pull the next car into the garage, which is a similar model in sort of concept, and we're so glad that Sarah Steen is here to share about some scenarios designed for workplace, again, that are supported with everything you need to run these in Pressbooks, but they're not meant to be something students do necessarily through the screen. So welcome, Sarah, and can you tell us a little bit about how your scenarios came to be?
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Thanks for the opportunity, and great to hear from Nora and Nara. I love the board game idea. So hi everyone, I'm Dr. Sarah Steen. I'm a course director and lecturer from Deakin University in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, of course. And so as a course director and a lecturer, I'm really passionate about creating really engaging learning environments. And so with one of the units I take, it's called Workplace Conflict Resolution. And the aim is to build skills in the area of difficult conversations, negotiation, mediation, so that they can use those skills in the workplace. And so it lent itself really nicely to developing an OER. I wanted to create a resource that we could use at Deakin in the classroom. And this is where we do our role plays, just to give everyone a bit of a view. So I wanted something that the students could use, but also the ability for other universities to use it as well. So this particular OER that I have developed is used in several other Australian universities for course material, and also some international universities. And I recently found out that the OER is being used in industry to help train managers in dealing with difficult conversations with staff. So I had intended for this OER to be for students, but it's had a wider impact as well, which has been very great to see. So what I'll do now is I'll share my screen and I'll show you my OER and talk more about it.
Excellent. See, the hood is lifting off, and we're getting. Well, no, we're still looking at the exterior,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah. So why this was needed. So there was a bit of a gap in the sense that I wanted some Australian examples that students could engage with in the classroom. So I take them through a lecture, a 50-minute lecture each week, to give them a bit of a sense of some theories and concepts and ideas around, what do you need to do before you prepare for a negotiation, or how would you, what skills are needed in a mediation. And there was a real gap of, well, now we need some application activities. And so that's where the OER came from. We wanted some scenarios that students could engage with. And I say students, but we know also industry using it as well. But that was the main purpose. And so thinking about what we wanted the OER to look like, it needed to be user-friendly. We wanted to be able to have multiple formats, for example, being able to download and have a PDF. We do have students who have additional learning needs where they need to access an ebook through different software programs to assist their learning. And so for us, Pressbooks was the answer in the sense of being able to provide a really easy way for us to develop and put out this OER. The other thing is it really had to look good. It has to look professional. It needed to look polished. And through the options we had in the Pressbooks, we were able to design something that looks professional, as you can see here. And so, yeah, what I'll do now is I will take you and have a look through the book. So inside the book, we have 5 role plays for difficult conversations, negotiation, and mediation. And so the idea behind it, I wanted to make sure that, as I said, that it could be utilized, in the OER idea of, sharing OERs and things like that. I wanted to make sure other areas could use it. So it doesn't have any curriculum tied to the role plays, but certainly you could, if there's a certain way you're teaching, for example, how to go through the negotiation phases, you can easily get students to apply to, for example, a negotiation role play. The other thing is in the ebook, there is instructions on how to actually run it from a facilitator perspective as well. So all the role plays have been trialed in this classroom in a bit of a seminar situation to make sure that it is user friendly for students, but also there is instructions there for the facilitator to actually run the role plays. And in terms of the actual running of the OER and how I actually integrate in the unit. So I actually introduced this to students in my first lecture and sort of say, look, look what I've developed. This is a fantastic resource that we're going to use throughout the trimester. And I do find students get a sense of like, wow, like my unit chair, my lecturer has actually created something for us, something special for us. And that's how I sort of start by introducing it. In the unit that it's connected to, students spend 7 weeks engaging in all different types of role plays. For the majority of the students in that unit, they're in their early 20s, and we of course have students all the way up to 40s and 50s. However, for a majority of our students, they haven't necessarily had much workplace experience. And so a really key component of integrating the OER into the classroom is to make sure that we are doing things like icebreakers and really building that community of learning in the classroom. So, and when I say classroom, we also have a very growing online cohort. So we run online and also in the classroom as well. So we needed a resource that was actually suitable for both cohorts, and of course through Pressbooks we've been able to meet that need as well, and stepping away a little bit from the printouts and the paper and things like that. Whilst it is obviously using technology, when I do run these role plays, we use the whiteboards which are on the other side of the classroom. Often I'll have questions on there and get them to use their whiteboard and write notes and things. So it's moving away from that very much paper-based traditional type classroom environment. So we start with an icebreaker. We want to build that connection between students, spend a couple of weeks doing so. And then it's really important that we make it clear as to what content we're wanting them to bring in the different scenarios. So let's have a look at the book. So just having a look at some of the contents there, I do talk about the notion I just spoke about in the sense of creating that environment for students, because it is very daunting from them. It's a very challenging unit, and so we want to make sure that they're feeling comfortable with each other. And so as you can see here, the OER is divided around the different areas of role plays. And so once we've sort of set up that, the community in the classroom and they're getting familiar with each other, by usually week 3, when we do start the role plays, we were very clear as to what content we want them to bring in. These are the skills we'd like you to practice, or this is the type of theories we'd like you to bring in. And so then just having a look at, for example, the first one here, which is a salary negotiation. one of the things that was really drawn to with Pressbooks is the way it was structured, sorry. It's really clear, it's pleasing, it looks professional, and so that really gave it that nice element that we were looking for. So it goes through some instructions on how you would conduct the role play. It gives you some suggestions around the time frames as well, and of course that's dependent on the learning environment. Of course, I'm very lucky that we get 2 hours a week where students engage in different role plays to practice their skills. And then it gives the perspective of different role players. So here we have role player 1, Amara, a bit of a brief there. And then we have a second role player as well. And what that does is it just gives a little bit more context for the students in the sense of what they're about to step into. Again, some of them come with limited workplace experience, so it just gives them a sense of, okay, this is the hat I need to put on to engage in it. And one thing that I really like with the Pressbooks is that we can obviously add to it as well. So one thing that we're recording at the moment and we will be adding in is examples of how we take the role plays to another level. So for example, with this particular role play where we have Zola as a HR manager, and we have Amara as a new employee negotiating a salary. What we do sometimes is we actually ask all those that are playing Zola and all those that are playing Amara, and we keep them separate and ask them to agree together on what their target points are. And the idea behind that is that once they then meet with the other person and they actually go through their role play, they all had the same starting point. And so that really adds that really interesting element when they come back and discuss, you know, what it is that they're actually able to negotiate on, and they can see the variance in terms of what the actual end, you know, decision was. So that's another element, but that's something that with Pressbooks we're able to go in and add those additional elements as needed. The other thing that's really important, besides, of course, setting up the learning environment, getting them comfortable with each other, going through the instructions, you know, setting up and saying we're just all having a go and, you know, going through that role play scenario. The really important aspect after that is to make sure that we're giving them time to reflect on how they've gone. And so you'll see in some of the scenarios as an observer, as an option. And that can be really powerful for that third person to give really good insights as to what they've observed. So I've included some examples of some of the things they could be looking for in that role play to feed back to students. The other thing that I do is I get them to, again, if we've got an observer, or just to give them some time to discuss how they felt they went, perhaps areas I'd like to improve on, you know, what skills, also shouting out some really good, perhaps negotiation tactics that were evident in the scenario. Another really critical aspect is to get them to also discuss between different groups as well and reflect on that. And that's what I was mentioning before. A lot of these questions here, you know, how do you find the role play? What skills were evident? Often I'll go around the classroom and write those questions on a whiteboard, give them a whiteboard marker, get them to go and actually write on it. And then as a group, we'll move over to each of the whiteboards to really get them up and about in the classroom as well. And given that, you know, that's they're on their computers a lot, the excitement of giving them a whiteboard marker, my goodness, it's my secret little student engagement strategy. So yeah, it's really about making sure that it's really well set up in the sense how, you know, you do run those role plays, and by having, you know, the download options and, you know, even just the user-friendly options in the OER through Pressbooks has been really, really helpful. The other thing I would mention as well is the analytics. So for me, seeing, you know, who the referrers are, you know, what's the visiting data and all that has been really interesting to see just how impactful the OER has been, and, you know, to see which the, you know, the most popular role plays as well has been fantastic feature in Pressbooks to observe that as well. And of course, as I mentioned before, you know, the ability to add to it. So as I said, we were looking at adding additional insights as to how we can make some of the role plays more complex. You'll see that some of the scenarios, for example, within the difficult conversations are quite short in length, and that is because, you know, you do need to build students' confidence before they sort of step into a more larger sort of a role play. So it is sort of scaffolded within the OER in that sense as well. The other thing I was going to mention is that some of the scenarios are a little bit different. So I'll go to 2C. I'll just show you this example here. So this is negotiating a new marketing campaign. And so this was inspired by an example seen in a textbook. But what this particular scenario does is it has the actual terms that they need to negotiate in a contract. And this is one of the favorite role play students really enjoy this one, because also they have a sense of what they're trying to aim for. So what are the options that they have to negotiate for their budget? And they also have points allocated to that. So of course, the opposite role player has different point allocation depending on what's more suitable there. And so again, in a class environment, because they're all starting with a very simple, like the exact same sort of starting point, it's really interesting to compare after it to say, well, how many points did you get to see who technically won the negotiation? So it's adding another element to the negotiations in the classroom. And although the unit which is tied to the OER is quite a challenging one, it does really well in terms of the enjoyment, formal evaluations in terms of students, and usually after the trimester or even just out of the blue, I get emails from students saying, thank you so much. I had actually last week, I had a students reach out saying they're about to run a mediation in their workplace and found it really helpful that they'd gone through some, real life situations in the classroom that they can apply in the workplace. The other thing just to mention as well, in terms of the inspiration behind a lot of the role plays, that's come from some real life scenarios, but also we looked at things like Fair Work and what's happening in the industry to kind of see what kind of scenarios would sort of replicate what they'll be required to do in those areas when they get their first full-time job. And as I said, it's not just students who perhaps have limited experience. We have students who are also have some work experience and they're able to work on developing their skills even further.
So in one of your sessions, you'd have groups of students working on the same scenario, right? So they compare experiences.
Yeah. So each week they'll work on the exact same one at the exact same time, and we do make sure the students are mixed each week, so they're getting familiar, so they're not just with the same students. But we found that when they're engaging in the same role play scenarios, again, when they're debriefing, and particularly if there's a negotiation, it's really interesting to compare, what kind of tactics did they use, or what was the end game, what were they able to achieve in that negotiation role play, as a good comparison point as well, to sort of say that. And then if we've had observers, I often say, okay, well, this group's done really well, and the HR manager was able to, negotiate quite a low salary. What kind of techniques did you see that was utilized in that role play? So it's really that starting point. But again, coming back to my passion, which is really trying to design really engaging seminars for our students to learn, it's lent itself really nicely to that.
And how many,
Oh, go ahead, Ash.
sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
was going to ask, how many study periods have you run this through? Like trimesters or semesters?
Yeah, so it was launched in August 2023, and so we run it twice a year in both trimesters a year, so in two offerings a year.
And are you noticing a difference in the students, how they're finding the course, pre and post using these?
Yeah, so I mean, on the context, I mean, before I developed the OER, the scenarios weren't necessarily workplace based, and it was very clunky. We had printouts, and so from a user perspective, it wasn't very user friendly. And as I said, we had students coming through that needed to have an online resource that they could put into their software programs to help with their learning. And then by using it, we've seen that students, again, and it comes back to that promotion aspect of, this is being created for you, and we've really thought about how we want you to use it. So yeah, I have seen a shift in students appreciating it, but also a difference with having it as an online resource for students to use.
So when you're doing, like, say, the salary negotiation, do you see a wide range of results in terms of what different groups come up with?
Yeah, and that's the great talking point. Often we will record it on a whiteboard, and and it's not just like, oh, who got this, who got that, but it's like, okay, well, how did you get to that point? What skills were used, what was observed through that, what tactics did you use, and some students will say, they use quite dirty tactics in the negotiation. Then we say, well, is that appropriate to do so? And that leads into the real cool conversations around, what is expected in the workplace as well. So yeah, there is often quite huge differences. And sometimes it does come down to students who have gone through the experiences before and they've said, oh, I did this a couple of weeks ago. So they've had that real life experience and other students can learn from them. But yeah, it's been interesting to see that because you'd think, oh, everyone will be quite similar, particularly if they've got similar type of backgrounds. But no, we do see a lot of differences. And we almost are a little bit relieved to see the differences because then it creates really cool discussion points for students. And again, tying back to their learning in the unit around if it's negotiation or mediation.
All right, what a great lesson. And are the students a little bit like their first time doing this, are they a little bit nervous? Like the second
Yeah.
time, do they get much better in terms of how they play?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ellen. So the first time when we tell them, particularly in the lecture, how the unit's structured, the reaction is like, where's the door? Where's the door? I want to leave. So again, that's why we don't start the role plays till at least week 3 to get them comfortable with each other, particularly for, our online or on campus cohorts. And by the end of it, yeah, and that's also strategically why we do keep negotiation towards the end of the trimester so that, they feel a little bit more confident in more complex negotiation scenarios. But yeah, by the end of the trimester, yeah, it's awesome to see that the growth that they've had, and they're very much more confident as they approach the role plays. And they also have an assignment where they actually doing a role play for an assignment. So they record themselves doing a role play. They don't get marked on that, but the mark is based on how they reflect back on their video. So yes, they have to watch it back themselves and they need to reflect on how they actually went in that role play. So it is giving them experience in the seminar. And then of course there is that buy-in because it is linking to, they will need to do a much complex scenario for their assignment. So it is giving practice for that as well. So we do find, even though the seminar is not compulsory, it's the most attended unit in terms of student engagement as well. And I think it is because we have the tie-in. Plus, students really enjoy it. They enjoy, we're moving away from Q&As and, just looking at the textbook and that kind of thing. It's something really different. So we do find that students do have that different point. So I do hold on to this unit as much as I can.
Oh, so exciting. And I welcome anybody from the audience who might want to have a question. You can put it in chat. You can even take the mic. I'm curious if other instructors out there like have these kind of activities, or maybe if this inspires ideas.
Sharing.
Um, but again, and I hope Jen's listening to this, really is a great example of what we wanted to be able to showcase, that there's so much more to Pressbooks. And we've seen the versatility of it and what it lends to these kind of activities that are not typically what you think of as a book.
Yeah, exactly. I love I never would have thought of using Pressbooks for something like this. And I was like, oh, a board game and Pressbooks? Like what? How does that even work? But um, yeah, that's so interesting. And like you all were saying, so much of learning is online now. And so to be able to give them those in person, I think Sarah, you said like give them a whiteboard marker and just see them, like, see them light up. Whereas like when I was going to school, I'd be like, I don't know, but how people learn has changed so much. So thank you for sharing that. Do we have any question? I don't see any questions in the Q&A.
And I could certainly see, like, I mean, the format that you came up with, Sarah, is very easily for anybody who's looking to create
Mm,
some scenarios, and
mm.
easy enough to follow that and construct your own. And sounds like a great opportunity as well for some open pedagogy projects to have students research and write new ones.
Mm.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be really good to see how it works internationally with different legislative frameworks even and different policies. I think that would be such a good experience for a graduate to have and to bring into a workplace. There was a question that I missed earlier. Sorry to pull us back to diagnosis, and thank you, Sarah. Someone asked why 2D4s instead of 1D8. And once again, because we are probably extremely uh, um, thorough with our process, we looked at the probability tables of rolling 1d8 versus rolling 2d4s. And
Awesome.
you can create probability tables for any dice, and we have decided that then we like the distribution of the 2d4 a little bit better, making the 8 less likely than 1 in 8. So yes, that's what we've done. I hope that answered the question. Sorry, I missed it earlier.
I love this level of nerd. This is great.
Yeah, it's like who
Sorry,
knew
everyone.
who knew there was a website to help you look at dice probabilities, but it
I
makes
know.
sense. Yeah. And would it stop anybody from using a different die in the game?
No, and
Yeah.
anyone
Ma-
could, suggest a different rule, change a rule.
Yeah. So what are some next steps for both of your projects?
That's a good question. As I said in my intro, I think I do see a need to add a section of how you can make the role plays a little bit more complex, or give a bit more suggestions on how you run it. So, as I said, with asking all the HR managers to sort of decide on the starting point and then go off and meet with the employee. Another thing we've also tried as well is to mix it up a little bit. So for the negotiations, actually negotiating in a pair or a group, because that adds another whole level of complexity. So I think adding those additional little additional tips or other ways you can add levels of complexity is important. I would also really like to add in videos. I think that might also really help with going through, how to facilitate, but also it would be good to, partner with students and have their involvement. So that's the next steps that I'm looking at in the future. But Nora and Nara?
We have a whole list of cases that we're planning to add to ours. So some like groups of cases that are focused on slightly different things, maybe some more complicated ones. And so that you can, pick those groups of cases if you want to focus on something specific in the teaching session. So that's one of the things we're looking at doing when we find the time.
And again, I think, yes, we're keen to start evaluating a little bit more rigorously and possibly even quantitatively if there is a benefit from this resource, and continue promoting its uptake around the world to build a bit more of community, understand how different regional settings might need different variants, and try and, yeah, I think, yes, open pedagogy is really what we want to try and grow here, both as a, philosophy and as our resource as that project in that sense.
I'd love to,
Expansion packs, yes, there's a
yeah.
plan.
Yeah, I'd love to see more board games and other kinds of activities like this. And I'm wondering, Sarah, are there roles where people kind of like their role is to kind of like throw problems into the situation to create some of the things that need to be resolved, like troublemaker roles?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
was thinking,
sorry.
oh, go Sarah.
No, I was just going to say for some of the weeks when students are feeling comfortable and when we're all really comfortable with each other, in some of the later negotiation scenarios, I do have on the board, which again would be nice to also put in the OER, a list of things that students can pick from. So, be the disruptor, or don't agree with the first thing, or have a final ultimatum, those kind of things to try and be off-putting, constantly interrupt or don't agree to anything, or those kind of things. So yeah, that is something that would be good to have also in the OER as well. And I guess, looking at using Pressbooks for this has been wonderful because we can go in and edit it. Like if this was a textbook that we actually published, we'd be looking years and years and years down the track getting the additions out. So again, another positive for Pressbooks.
Definitely. I was thinking for Sarah, it would be good if, you added specific extra challenges or extra rules that make something different in a scenario. Like you are negotiating the salary, but you know that if you agree to certain things, then you'll need to justify it differently or things like that, really making
Yeah.
them more complex and even really realistic.
Mm. Well, yeah, thanks, Nora. Some of the scenarios do have contradictory information. So they don't find that out until they actually start the role play and then go, hang on, what?
That's
Hang
so
on, what?
cheeky.
I love it. It's gorgeous. Well done.
Thank you.
So brilliant. So what do you think, Jen? What do you think from the Pressbooks view? Is this exciting to see?
Yeah, I don't have a printer at my house, but I really want to print out this game and play it myself. We're coming up on time now. We've got about 3 minutes left. Any last questions from the audience or from Alan?
No, just so exciting and absolutely, Jenny, it was deliberate to do this on Australia time and not make you subscribe to North America time. It's
We've
only
done that
fair.
enough with folks. They've been joining our webinars at like 3:30 in the morning. So we thought, okay, it is time to optimize something for your time zone.
Yeah.
So I will be sending out a recording of this to everybody who's here and everybody who registered who's not here. So keep your eyes open for that next week. I'll include links to the resources that we discussed today. So you can all print out your own board games. Um, yeah, I just thank you everyone for joining. Anybody from the panel, do you have any last words of wisdom, anything you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to today?
Just one thing is that I realized using Pressbooks that it also gave our project a legitimacy in academia that wouldn't have had if we just found another way. Because sure, it's a board game, but it is an educational resource, and the OER movement is a broader educational movement, and we are able to say these are the principles we are reinforcing in doing our project in a certain way. And we could have built our own website and shared all of the resources there, but that would have
Yeah.
not had
Mm.
that kind of impact that we want to have. So thank you, Pressbooks, and thanks everyone who has supported this journey.
And just one more thing. Jen, we'll put out a little teaser because we're still forming it, but
Mm.
in September, we're hoping to bring you two OERs that are in vocational or workplace fields. So we're kind of stretching, what we're looking at, and we're just working on lining those up. And I have to do this because it's a plug. Because these are such great projects. OE Global's running now our OE Awards for Excellence. And yeah, it'd be great to get an award, and awards are wonderful. But I think the bigger purpose is just to share some of this work with the larger community. And so I really encourage, and I'm putting my arm twist on Ash because I want to see a really strong showing from Australia. So like all those OERs themselves are worth nominating for this program, just so the rest of the world can sort of get a chance to see it and put some limelight on the great work that's going on there.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. We'll end the session here, but thanks again to our panelists and to Alan for driving the cars into the.
No, I don't cry. But thank you so much. It's been an exciting session.
I was gonna say have a great night, but it's day for most of you. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.